The ultimate goal of a dogfight is to kill the enemy. But as a fighter pilot, you might find yourself in a position of disadvantage with an enemy on your tail. When this happens, your only goal is to survive. Now there's a specific skill set that goes along with surviving in that defensive situation, and that's what we'll delve into in this video. The U.S. Air Force lists the objectives of Defensive BFM like this. The word survive is at the top in all caps for a reason. Just by being alive and in the fight, you're presenting a problem to the enemy. He has to focus on you because if he doesn't, you'll kill him. And while you're keeping that bandit busy, your allies are getting closer. So keep the following in mind. If you're in an F5 flying a sustained rate turn, then it will take about 36 seconds to make a complete circle. A friendly fighter traveling at Mach 1 can cover around 7 miles in that time. Make it around that circle twice, and now every friendly fighter within 14 miles can join in. Dragging out the fight means bringing in more friends to help. This is why the Air Force prioritizes survival. Just by being alive, you're winning the fight. Before we can jump into tactics, we need to anticipate what the bandit is going to do so we can counter him. You want to be able to read the bandit's intentions by observing what he's doing with his aircraft. Just like in offensive BFM, where we use visual clues to find the bandit's turn circle and line up for a shot, we can see visual clues for when he's about to shoot at us. That's what this video's exercise is about, and that exercise is known as the defensive ranging exercise. In this exercise, we'll have our bandit run through all the visual cues so you can see what they look like firsthand. If you haven't already, I recommend you check out the videos on the following topics. Links will be in the description. As we've progressed through this series on BFM, we've introduced a lot of new topics a successful fighter pilot needs to know. We're going to introduce another concept known as the cross-check, which we'll be using in our exercise. When we talk about cross-checks, what we mean is taking in some important information in addition to whatever happens to be our central focus. So in normal flight, you might have most of your focus outside the canopy, making sure your wings level and not flying into an obstacle. But you might occasionally take a glance at your airspeed indicator and fuel gauge. That would be a cross-check on speed and fuel. In BFM, cross-checks are just as important. Some aircraft let you do your cross-checks while keeping an eye on the bandit, but that's not always the case. We'll cover the important things to watch for as we go over the defensive ranging exercise. The purpose of the defensive ranging exercise is to gain familiarity with the defensive perch setup and to practice assessing pursuit curves and ranges. As you spend more time practicing, you'll get better at estimating range, which lets you know if the bandit is close enough to employ weapons and which weapon would be best for him. But assessing the bandit's pursuit curve is important too. Pursuit curves tell us what the bandit is planning to do. To use one of the AIM-9Ps equipped on our jets, the bandit will need to be in a pure pursuit to point the missile seeker at your jet. You can identify a pure pursuit bandit by this narrow nose-on profile. Since guns require lead pursuit in a turning dogfight, then it's a good indicator that the bandit is about to shoot if you see him pulling lead. Lead pursuit is indicated when you see the bandit's belly. And if the bandit's closure rate is too high or he needs to ease repo for a better angle, then you'll see him pull lag to compensate. A bandit is in lag pursuit when you see the jet's topside and is usually accompanied by an LOS shift towards the aft of your canopy. It can be hard to tell the difference between lead and pure pursuit, and this difference will vary between different aircraft. A dedicated air-to-air platform may have a gun canted up to reduce required lead, while some are optimized for ground strafing with guns canted down. Either way, the amount of lead required will vary, and that will affect the lead pursuit picture. The F5s who I use have their guns aligned with the aircraft bore line, so they'll need a little lead, but not much. Throughout this exercise, keep an eye on the bandit's profile to see how the pursuit picture changes. The defensive ranging exercise begins with the 6,000-foot perch setup, which we covered in the offensive BFM part of this series. As the defender, you'll want the bandit to turn towards you during the initial check turn. Fights On starts us at 350 knots and 6,000 feet of range in a slowly descending turn. When you hear the bandit call Fights On, take a mental snapshot of what that range looks like. That's 6,000 feet, and the bandit will look about the same size as when you're flying in tactical formation. As the bandit closes in, you'll want to split your time between watching the bandit and your instruments. This is one of our cross-checks, and it's important because the bandit isn't the only thing that can get you killed in BFM. The ground is another danger to watch out for, so you'll want to incorporate a floor into your BFM exercises. The floor is simply a minimum altitude that will act as a stand-in for the ground. You can choose whatever floor you like, but a good starting point would be a 10,000 foot floor paired with a 15,000 foot starting altitude. This will give you 5,000 feet of room to use for some extra turn performance. Getting into the habit of cross-checking your altitude will build good habit patterns for the future. There are 3 other things we want to add to our cross-check: lift vector, G, and airspeed. This is because these 3 things control our turn rate. So we always want to strive to use these 3 controls to reach our optimal turn rate as shown on our EM diagram. But we need to keep altitude in mind too, because once we reach the floor, our options for maximizing turn rate change. Here's how that works. When we have altitude to spare, we can always trade that altitude for performance by lowering our lift vector. Think back to our EM diagram. We can increase turn rate by pulling more G. However, that comes at a cost in airspeed unless we're in a dive. So a turn with the lift vector below the horizon will let you go a little higher in the chart. But this only works until you reach the floor. At that point, you can no longer trade altitude for turn rate and will have to transition to a 0 PS turn, which would mean this line right here and no higher. So if you're counting on that improved performance, you'll lose that at the floor. The other problem you'll have is now you're devoting more time to cross-checking altitude than when you have thousands of feet to spare. During this exercise, don't worry too much about performance. The goal here is to see what the bandit is doing while maintaining good cross-checks. Here's what the bandit needs to do during this exercise. Call out Fights On at 6,000 feet of range. This will give the fighter a good visual reference for what 6,000 feet looks like. The bandit will then drive all the way to the 1,000 foot safety bubble, showing pure aspect and calling Fox 2 on the way whenever an opportunity for an AIM-9 shot is presented. This is what the bandit will look like at pure pursuit. When he goes into lag, you'll see the top of his aircraft. Once the bandit gets within 2,500 feet, you'll see him pull pure, then lead pursuit for a gunshot. The bandit will call snapshot or tracking to indicate what kind of shot he has. Since the bandit isn't allowed within 1,000 feet, a transition to lag pursuit is needed to build some range. With this move to lag, you'll see the bandit move across your canopy and may need to shift your view to the other side of the canopy to maintain tally. You can end the exercise with a terminate or knock it off call. Let's take a look at this from inside the cockpit. Once Fights On is called, you'll be in a descending turn with the bandit creeping up into your control zone. Remember, we're not too worried about performance here. We just care about keeping an eye on the bandit and doing our cross-checks. We're going to see a lot of this narrow profile as the bandit pulls pure pursuit. You should expect to hear the Fox 2 call during this phase. After the bandit gets to guns range, you should see him go slightly nose up into lead pursuit. Now, it might be difficult to see once YouTube gets done with compressing this video, but the bandit's nose is raised slightly. It's hard to see in the game and in real life too, but we have a couple visual cues here to help us identify when this happens. First, we can see the wingtip contrails arcing up sharply, which tells us the bandit is pulling back hard. Then we can see the afterburner glow here under the bandit's fuselage. When the bandit is pure, we can see the glow above and below, so when it's only visible underneath, then we know he is nosing up. After the bandit has taken his shot, we see him go into lag to build up some range. We know it's lag pursuit because we see the top of his jet. These are the important visual references you'll need to know for BFM. The goal of practicing this is to get you to a point where you recognize what the bandit is doing with just a glance. Let's recap the exercise. Start with the 6,000-foot perch with the slowly descending turn. Don't worry about max performance here, just focus on the bandit and your cross-checks. Make a mental note of what 6,000 feet of range looks like. Watch for pure pursuit as the bandit closes in. When he has a valid AIM-9 shot, he'll call out Fox 2. Once he's in gun range, which is between 1,000 and 2,500 feet, you'll see the bandit transition from pure to lead pursuit. The bandit will call out snapshot or tracking to indicate the type of sight picture he has. To stay out of the 1,000-foot safety bubble, the bandit will then go to lag pursuit to build up range and start the process over. You can end the exercise with the terminate or knock it off call. The goal of the defensive ranging exercise is to teach the fighter how to correctly assess different pursuit curves and ranges. It's also useful for building a good cross-check. While you can use any altitude you want, I suggest starting the exercise at 15,000 feet with the floor of 10,000. But feel free to change these parameters to suit your training needs. These concepts are simple in practice, but to really get a feel for them, you need to experience them for yourself. That's why it's important to practice these exercises just like they do in the Air Force. As we continue this series, we'll cover 2 more exercises for teaching the fundamentals of defensive BFM. In the meantime, make sure to practice these BFM exercises to build experience, and thanks for watching.